So let us start with the use of Turnitin within UNISA. As noted by the introduction, this is for UNISA students specifically. If there are any lecturers in attendance, you are also most welcome to join in with your students. Note that we do conduct separate training sessions for lecturers to assist you with the administration of the Turnitin process for your students. This presentation would speak to all module codes within my modules, within my UNISA or my exams, as well as my SPL. So what is Turnitin? So Turnitin Originality is a product that was acquired by UNISA for originality checking of student work to guard against academic misconduct. Academic misconduct would include things like plagiarism and ghostwriting. It serves to encourage academic integrity and original work. That is the focus of using Turnitin at UNISA. In respect of academic integrity at UNISA, please note that UNISA does not tolerate any form of academic misconduct. So do make sure that you are familiar with the content of the various policies and rules that are available for students online. If you've read these policies before, or when you started your studies, or even if you just read them last year, please go in and read them again. Make sure that you've read the latest version, as these policies are regularly updated and filled with new information to assist you within your academic journey. So Turnitin is integrated. As a UNISA student, you do not have to ask for Turnitin. There is no need to take any special action in respect of Turnitin processing. It is fully integrated with my modules, my exams, and my SPL that form part of your My UNISA platform. So this will be valid for all assignments or assessments or exams that would be using Turnitin. So if you submit in any of these respective spaces, a Turnitin originality report will run automatically when it is required. Please do note that not all assignments and examinations require originality reports. So this means you do not need to expect a report for every single submission. It will be applied as required. Then a warning. This is a warning to protect your work. You have to submit your work yourself within the formal UNISA submission space. In other words, there where you would log in with your My Life email credentials. Please do not upload your work in duplicate. It will compromise your originality report. What do I mean by do not upload in duplicate? It means you do not give your work to a friend, a colleague, or a family member, or upload it, let's say, on a platform in your own workspace. Okay, please only upload your work within your formal UNISA space. This is where we can protect your work and guard it against misconduct for future use when other people try to plagiarize from your work. Okay. The one thing that you would need to do is when Turnitin is required for a submission is that you have to accept the Turnitin EULA. This is the end user license agreement. And this is very important because this protects your work. In other words, your intellectual property within the UNISA Turnitin space. So you have to accept this when you first upload something where Turnitin is needed. And you will see it's going to give you a little block to say for the submission to be sent to Turnitin, you would need to accept the Turnitin EULA. The block is in orange and you actually do need to click on it to be able to accept the Turnitin EULA. If you've not accepted it, it will show you a little note at the bottom that says awaiting EULA. Okay, so you have to click actually on accept the Turnitin EULA. If you've accepted it, it will immediately give you a little pop-up note to say thank you very much that you have accepted this. And the nice thing is you only need to do this once. Okay, so you will do this once, for instance, on my modules. And if it is used for your modules on my exams, then on the my exams space, you would also need to accept that. So you accept it once, and then going forward, it will remember, and it will also remind you not to worry, it has already been accepted. So any future submissions where Turnitin would be required would also put up a little note to say it has already been accepted. Important to note, your Turnitin files, what would be acceptable when Turnitin is applied. This information would also be provided by your lecturer or your instructor of the specific requirements, and it is most important that you adhere to these requirements. So the first choice is usually MS Word, specifically the one that says .docx, so the latest MS Word version. This is the easiest and the quickest way. Although there are some of the submissions that would require a PDF document, note that it needs to be Adobe PDF, so not scanned or imaged or any other distiller to be used except for Adobe. So this will make sure for a smooth process. Okay. Your originality reports at UNISA are all inclusive. So for every submission, you would need to include a title page. This assists in protection of your authorship. So include your name, your student number, your module code, what assignment or assessment that would be, and the date. This is always needed, or a cover page, or if you have a prescribed template from your lecturer that needs to accompany your submission. So that would be included. Then the bibliography or a reference list also should be included. And this is to be done according to the lecturer or supervisor's instructions, as not all of your submissions might need this, but it serves as confirmation of the study or research content in your document. Therefore, it needs to be included. Note, submissions are permanently stored in Turnitin. So make very sure that you have the correct file format, that you include the correct content, and that you have the correct version of your work when you upload. For submissions where PDF is required, you need to do the file conversion as shown in this specific slide. So this slide is also included in the new list of frequently asked questions. Do familiarize yourself with that list. It will guide you wherever Turnitin is applied for your submissions at UNISA. So when you type your work in MS Word, you would simply go to the file option, and then you will see there is the option to save as Adobe PDF. That is what you will use. You will say save as Adobe PDF, and then you will go to your specific submission where you want to save it in your file on your computer. So that's how you would convert it by using the save as Adobe PDF option. Okay. So what happens with your document when it goes to Turnitin? Okay. When my UNISA receives your document, doesn't matter in which platform, whether it's my modules or my exams or my SPL, it will be sent to Turnitin for processing. Then Turnitin will receive it and compare it to different repositories. So there is a repository, we just loosely call it periodicals, for all sorts of publications. There's a repository for the internet that would cover both current and archived internet sites. And then there is a student paper repository. This you will see reflected as submitted works in your reports going forward. So this repository would include all submissions, both nationally and internationally, that were submitted to Turnitin. For those of you who are not aware of this, Turnitin is a global company. It is utilized across the world in all continents. All of your major universities in Africa also make use of Turnitin, so they do have an extensive database of submissions. So when your document is then received, Turnitin starts the process to generate an originality report. Note that this is not a plagiarism report, so please do not refer to it as a plagiarism report. Okay. Turnitin checks the integrity of the submission. It helps to identify authorship originality, and through that it guards against academic misconduct and non-original work which is falsely presented as an author's own work, for instance. Okay, so please be aware of that fact. The Turnitin process, as you know, it gets sent from MyUnisa to Turnitin, and then MyUnisa collects it to make that report available to you. You need to allow for 48 hours, okay, for this process to be completed. Okay, once it is complete, it will be attached to your submission, and you will see it by viewing a similarity index. I will shortly show you an example. Okay, your reports are available to both the student and the lecturer or the supervisor on your My Modules and My SPL. You also have the advantage that you get 3 options for your submission. You get a draft, a revision, and a final submission option. So this means that once you've uploaded your work and an originality report was generated, you can review that report. You can discuss with your lecturer or supervisor, and then you can do revisions. And then you can come back and you can upload your revised version of your work, and then a new report would be generated, and subsequently you can then upload a final version of your work. Please do note that you need to give sufficient time for report generation. So if you want to make use of these 3 opportunities, you need to start with your first submission well in advance of the due date, at least a week or 2 before the due date. Otherwise, you cannot make use of this advantage that you have. Note that if you've finished with your submission before the due date and you're happy with your work, on the due date itself, it will regenerate the originality reports for the whole group, and that would be the final report. In other words, you might see a slight change in your similarity index because a report would be generated for all submissions within that specific group, so that the time, date and time is the same for everybody when processing, and that is what will be used to grade or to mark the specific submission. If you've uploaded and you see that it says queued, okay, note that this is not an error. If it says queued, it means it's on its way to Turnitin. We have not yet received it. It is on its way. You could potentially also see that it says pending. It means then that it is in process. If you do not see queued or pending, but you see a message like this one that says report unavailable, there is a blue encircled question mark. So whenever you see a blue encircled question mark, you can know that that is a little speech bubble where you can click on it to get more information. In this specific instance, the note said a report was not generated for the submission because this submission was scanned. Okay, so it was an image, so it was not correctly converted into PDF. This was a scanned PDF submission. In other words, the file did not comply with the requirements and the instructions that were given by the lecturer. Okay, so you have the opportunity, if you've made this mistake, that you can come back, do a proper conversion from MS Word to save as a PDF, and then upload the correct file format to be processed. So this is not a Turnitin error. It is an error on the side of the file and that is the reason why there is no report. If your report was successfully generated, you would see the Turnitin icon. That is the little blue page with the arrow in the corner, and next to it would be a color-coded block with the similarity index. Please note that this is a similarity index. Also note that the color code itself bears no meaning. Okay, The only thing that this percentage shows you is that it is non-original content. It tells you how much from that specific submission is not original. It is not a plagiarism percentage. So also, please do not refer to it as a plagiarism percentage because it is a similarity index. Okay. So why do we call it a similarity index? That is because the Turnitin findings show us non-original content. So everything that is not original in that submission would be highlighted. So obviously, if there is copied text from other sources in the submission, it would be highlighted. If discipline-related terminology was used, that could be highlighted. When you use names or titles, even direct quotes can be highlighted. Although you have duly acknowledged them, because it is not original, it would be highlighted. And that is why we call it a report of non-originality, and we refer to a similarity index. The report needs to be analyzed to see if plagiarism was present within the specific document, or if there was any other form like ghostwritten content within that specific submission. And here we have an example of the originality report. On the left, you would see the content, okay, of what was submitted. So in order to view this report, as you see it here, you would have to click on that similarity index. In other words, the percentage in the color-coded block, and it will open it for you in a new tab in the browsers that you're using. A quick tip there. Best browsers to use when you are going to view your Turnitin originality reports would be to utilize either Firefox or Chrome. Okay, so it opens in a new tab. And then on the left, you see the text content, and on the right would be a column that is going to provide you with a source overview. You will see from the text on the left that portions of that text are going to be color coded. So it's highlighted in different colors, and they are also numbered. So every number has its own color, and that would correspond with the individual sources listed in the column on the right hand side. In other words, if you see, like my example here, we have an instance of number 1. So there's a little number 1 and a portion of blue highlighted text. That means that portion of text matches source number 1 in the column on the right hand side. So my number 1 in my column is then also in blue. This image does not show me an example for number 2, but we can see an example for number 3, for instance, where it is in purple. On the left, we have a paragraph. It is marked with number 3, and then we have highlighted text in purple. That means it matches number 3. Okay, and with each of these sources, you are also going to see a percentage. This is the individual source match percentage. So what does that mean? For instance, let's take my number 1. It says 26%. That tells me if I were to scroll through this whole document, all of the instances highlighted in blue and marked with a little number 1 mean that they match source number 1. So 26% of the content of the submission matches number 1. It will also always put the highest source first, and then the matches will decrease until you will find ones that say less than 1%. And they usually match with names or titles or subject jargon that might have been used in the document. Okay, so these are your individual matches. Note that they are not cumulative to your overall index. Okay, the overall similarity index is calculated completely separate. Okay, then your burning question would always be, then what percentage is acceptable? There is no acceptable similarity index. Okay, let me repeat that. There is no acceptable similarity index. Why? Because that index is not an indication of plagiarism or necessarily of any misconduct within the specific submission. However, let me explain that to you. It means that you could have a low percentage or something that appears to be low, like 12% for the submission. But if blatant plagiarism is seen within the specific submission, like a page of text that was copied directly from another source, that is going to be unacceptable, even if the percentage appears to be low. Or maybe you could have a bit of a higher percentage, like 20%. And when that report is analyzed and reviewed, it is found that there are no forms of academic misconduct in the specific submission. The matches are for titles or references, or they are for subject jargon, then that percentage could be acceptable and it would be reviewed by your lecturer or supervisor for that specific submission. So we do not look at the overall similarity index. But what we can do is we can provide you with a guideline for your individual matches. And the guideline for the individual matches is 5%. In other words, that would mean that any one of these in the source list needs to be less than 5%. So clearly my 26% for number one is way above the guideline of 5%. So I would immediately know I should address this. I should review this specific source that I have used. Maybe I used too many quotes, or I relied too heavily on the content from that specific source, and I can review that. Okay, so even my number two, which is 23%, that is above the 5%. Number three is 50%. Even my number four that peaks out here at the bottom, which says 9%, is above the 5% guideline. Now, I know that some of you might think immediately, but wow, the 5% is a very wide guideline. Yes, it is a wide guideline, but that is to allow for subject jargon. That allows for the use of templates, or when you have to follow prescribed instructions from your lecturer or supervisor, if you've used names or titles in the content of your submission, that would be covered within that specific scope, and it also assists to protect you so that you're not incidentally step into the trap of copyright infringement where you might have overutilized one specific source. So if you abide by that guideline where each individual match is less than 5%, you are usually safe in that specific regard. It does not mean that it is acceptable just because it is less than 5%, because you do need to adhere to the instructions and the outcomes that have been set by the lecturer or supervisor for that specific submission. So always to consider the purpose and expectation for that submission in this respect. Okay, so analysis is always done by your lecturer or your supervisor, and it is through analysis that any form of academic misconduct would be revealed should it be present within that specific submission. Note that it is not necessary for you to rework every single portion of highlighted text. That is not the idea here. Turnitin is not a debugging tool. Okay, so the idea is not that you need to get a low percentage. The focus is rather that you deliver original work and that this tool is applied to show you the areas where you could address things like the overutilization of quotes, for example, or overutilization of one specific source, or where you might need to improve on your academic writing skills and learn to duly paraphrase work in there. There are certain conditions where a specific percentage might be acceptable, and that would be addressed by your lecturer or supervisor. So to summarize, okay, there is not such a thing as acceptable percentages, okay, because UNISA does not tolerate plagiarism or any other form of academic misconduct. For your similarity index, you need to deliver original work. And then, of course, it will decrease the percentages. Okay. You have to paraphrase in your own words. You need to use your quotes sparingly. And then when in doubt, cite your sources. Remember, it's a universal rule across the institution that for all UNISA students, for the matching content of a single source, it needs to be less than 5%. Okay? As part of the focus to build academic integrity in the institution. If you need additional support in respect of the content of the works that you need to deliver, consult with your lecturer or supervisor. You need to read your prescribed study material, any instructions that have been provided to you, or additional information that you might have received from your department or your college. Very important. Also visit the UNISA library pages for guidance on research ethics, academic integrity, and referencing styles. Referencing plays a very, very important role when we speak about academic integrity. And if you visit the LibGuides online, you would receive valuable information in that regard. So do make sure that you know where to find the specific page that would apply to you. And that has brought me to the end of today's presentation. I trust you found the information valuable. This presentation with the new frequently asked questions list would be made available to you, and it can also be found online. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.